The billionaire's hand was still extended across the dusty workbench when Marcus Reed said the word that would change everything. No. Charlotte Weston had never been rejected. Not in business, not in life, and certainly not by a carpenter covered in sawdust in the middle of a half-renovated Victorian mansion. Her perfectly manicured fingers hung in the air between them, her invitation to dinner dissolving into stunned silence. Around them, the old house creaked and settled, its exposed beams and torn-out walls bearing witness to something that felt almost historic. The afternoon light slanted through grimy windows, catching dust motes that swirled between them like tiny witnesses to an impossible moment. "I'm sorry," Charlotte heard herself say, the words coming out higher than intended. "I said no." Marcus set down his hammer with deliberate care, giving her his full attention for the first time since she'd walked onto his job site 20 minutes ago. His eyes were the color of worn leather, warm brown with flecks of gold that caught the light, and they held no apology. "I don't date clients, and I don't date women who show up unannounced trying to buy my time." "I'm not trying to buy your time. I'm asking you to dinner." "With what intention?" He crossed his arms, sawdust falling from his flannel sleeves like snow. "You own half the commercial real estate in this city. You could have any contractor in Tennessee working on your grandmother's cottage. But you specifically requested me, showed up here on my other job site, and now you're asking me to dinner." His jaw tightened. "So I'll ask again, with what intention?" Charlotte felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to being questioned, wasn't used to explaining herself to anyone, let alone a man who probably made in a year what she spent on a single charity gala. "Maybe I just find you interesting," she said, attempting to recover her composure. "Interesting." Marcus repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "That's what people like you call it when you're slumming, when you want a story to tell your rich friends about that time you went out with a carpenter. A single dad who works with his hands and doesn't know which fork to use at fancy restaurants. That's not. In my world, Miss Weston, you don't buy people's time, you earn it." He picked up his hammer again, turning back to the window frame he'd been repairing. "And right now, you haven't earned the privilege of breathing the same air as me." The dismissal was so complete, so utterly without room for negotiation, that Charlotte found herself taking a step backward before she'd consciously decided to move. She'd built a billion-dollar empire. She'd stared down hostile board members and corporate raiders and men who tried to destroy her simply because she'd had the audacity to succeed while female. No one spoke to her like this. No one. And yet, standing in this half-renovated house with sawdust settling on her designer heels, Charlotte Weston felt something she hadn't felt in years. Genuinely, completely, humiliatingly rejected. Oh my goodness, can you believe he just said that to a billionaire? That takes courage, doesn't it? Now, before we see how Charlotte handles this rejection, I want to take a quick moment to thank you for being here with me right now. I see you watching from the United States, from Texas, California, Florida, New York. Thank you for spending your evening with us. To my beautiful viewers in the United Kingdom, London, Manchester, Birmingham, you wonderful people who stay up late to watch our stories, I appreciate you more than you know. To my Canadian family, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, your warmth and kindness in the comments always makes my day. And to my amazing South African viewers, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, your passion for these love stories inspires me to keep creating. If you're enjoying this story so far, please do me one small favor, tap that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. It's completely free, takes just 1 second, and it means the world to me. We're building something special here, a community of people who still believe in love, in second chances, in the kind of romance that makes your heart skip a beat. When you subscribe, you become part of our Story Buddy family. And trust me, You don't want to miss what happens next with Charlotte and Marcus. This story is about to take a turn that will have you reaching for the tissues. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and I love seeing our global family come together over these stories. Now, let's get back to Charlotte, because she's about to make a decision that changes everything. Charlotte made it to her car before the shock wore off, and the anger set in. Who does he think he is? She fumed into her phone, her assistant Diane's patient voice on the other end. A carpenter with a chip on his shoulder thinks he can speak to me like that. What exactly did he say? Diane asked, her tone carefully neutral in the way that meant she was trying not to laugh. He said I hadn't earned the privilege of breathing the same air as him, like I'm some kind of socialite looking for a project. Like I'm not. Charlotte stopped, catching her reflection in the rearview mirror. Designer sunglasses, perfect makeup. Clothes that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Maybe she did look like a socialite looking for a project. Charlotte, Diane's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Are you still there? I'm here. Tell me everything you know about Marcus Reed. There was a pause, the sound of keyboard clicking. He's 40 years old, single father to an 8-year-old boy named Lee. His wife, ex-wife, left when the child was 6 months old, signed over full custody, moved to California. Apparently, she decided motherhood wasn't for her. Charlotte felt something twist in her chest. An 8-year-old raised by a single father. A man who'd been abandoned with an infant and somehow kept going. What else? He's considered the best restoration carpenter in 3 counties. Specializes in historical properties, Victorian and craftsman mostly. Has a reputation for being honest, reliable, and extremely particular about his clients. More clicking. He's also taking care of his mother who has early-stage Alzheimer's. She's in a memory care facility across town. From what I can tell, he's barely keeping his head above water financially, but he's never missed a payment. How do you know that? I have resources, Charlotte. It's literally my job. Charlotte sat in her car, processing this information. Marcus Reed wasn't just a carpenter with an attitude. He was a man carrying impossible weight. A child, a sick parent, the constant pressure of making ends meet, and somehow still finding the strength to reject a billionaire who'd shown up on his job site with presumptions and designer heels. He thinks I'm slumming, Charlotte said quietly, looking for entertainment. Are you? The question hit harder than it should have. Was she? She'd heard about Marcus Reed through a contractor friend, had been intrigued by the description of a man who did beautiful work and didn't care about impressing anyone. She'd requested him for her grandmother's cottage restoration partly because of his reputation and partly because what? Because she was tired. Tired of men who saw her net worth before they saw her. Tired of relationships that felt like business negotiations. Tired of being the smartest, most powerful person in every room and still feeling desperately, achingly alone. I don't know, Charlotte admitted. Maybe I was. Maybe I wanted someone who didn't know who I was. Someone who'd see me as just a woman instead of a balance sheet. He knows who you are now. Yes, and he still said no, Charlotte laughed, but it came out hollow. Do you know how long it's been since someone said no to me, Diane? Actually said no without trying to negotiate or find an angle. I'm going to guess not recently. Try never, not since I took over the company. Everyone wants something. Everyone's calculating what they can get. She pulled off her sunglasses, rubbing her eyes. He looked at me like I was just another rich person trying to buy what she couldn't earn, and maybe he's right. Or maybe, Diane said carefully, he's a man who's been hurt and is protecting himself. His ex-wife left him with a baby. His mother is losing her memories. He works constantly just to stay afloat. Of course, he's suspicious of a billionaire showing up with dinner invitations. So what do I do? That depends. Do you actually like him, or are you just annoyed that he said no? Charlotte considered the question seriously. She thought about Marcus Reed's hands, calloused and capable, moving over old wood with something like reverence. She thought about the way he'd spoken to his crew, patient and clear, never raising his voice. She thought about the photo she'd glimpsed on his phone when he'd set it down, a grinning boy with his father's eyes holding a stuffed dinosaur. "I think I actually like him," she said slowly, "or at least I want to know if I could." "Then earn it." "Earn what?" "His time, his trust, whatever he needs to see before he'll believe you're not just slumming." Diane's voice carried a smile. "You're Charlotte Weston. You've never backed down from a challenge in your life. Why start now?" Charlotte ended the call and sat in her car for a long moment, watching Marcus through the window of the Victorian house. He'd gone back to work, his movements precise and unhurried, treating the old wood with the kind of care usually reserved for living things. 5 minutes, she thought. That's what she'd give him. 5 minutes to prove this wasn't just about wounded pride, that there was something real beneath her interest. If he still wanted nothing to do with her after 5 minutes of her genuine self, she'd walk away. But something told her 5 minutes might not be enough. Something told her Marcus Reed was going to be the hardest thing she'd ever tried to win. The cottage sat at the end of a winding dirt road, surrounded by oak trees that had probably witnessed the Civil War. Charlotte hadn't been here in almost 30 years, not since her grandmother's funeral, when she'd been 15 and angry at the world and desperate for someone to notice she was drowning. Now she stood on the sagging porch, looking at a house that had fallen into beautiful decay, and felt something crack open in her chest. "You came." She turned to find Marcus standing at the edge of the property, his truck parked behind her Mercedes, toolbox in hand. He looked different here, less defensive, more curious, like the neutral territory had shifted something between them. "You said to meet you at 8. I'm here at 8. I said to meet me here if you were serious about the restoration, not to continue whatever game you were playing at the Hendricks house." "It's not a game." Charlotte forced herself to hold his gaze. "I was wrong to show up unannounced, wrong to assume you'd be interested just because I was. I'm sorry." Marcus studied her for a long moment, looking for deception or manipulation. She let him look. She had nothing to hide, at least nothing he'd be able to find. "Apologies from billionaires usually come with strings attached," he said finally. "No strings, just an apology and a genuine desire to have my grandmother's cottage restored by someone who will treat it with respect." She gestured at the house behind her. This place meant everything to her. "It's where she came every summer, where she taught me to bake and to read, and to believe I was worth more than my father's expectations. I want it saved, properly, by someone who understands what old houses mean." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of recognition. "You loved her, your grandmother. She was the only person who ever saw me. Not the heiress, not the responsibility, not the disappointment when I turned out to be a girl instead of the son my father wanted. Just Charlotte, just me." "When did she pass?" "When I was 15. Cancer." Charlotte's voice roughened despite her best efforts. "She left me this cottage in her will. I was supposed to keep it maintained, keep it alive, but I was so angry about losing her that I couldn't bear to come here. I let it fall apart instead. Let it rot because facing it meant facing how much I'd lost." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he climbed the porch steps, his boots heavy on the weathered wood, and examined the front door with professional attention. "The bones are good," he said finally. "The foundation's solid, the framing's intact. It's mostly cosmetic damage, 30 years of neglect, but nothing that can't be fixed." He turned to look at her. "It'll take time. 3 months minimum, probably 4, and it won't be cheap." "I don't care about cheap. I care about right. Most people say that until they see the invoices. I'm not most people. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. No, I'm starting to see that. He walked through the cottage slowly, assessing each room with the focus of a surgeon evaluating a patient. Charlotte followed silently, watching him run his hands over damaged moldings and warped floorboards, hearing him mutter calculations under his breath. Original built-ins, he said, pausing at a wall of shelves in what had been her grandmother's reading room. These are beautiful. Whoever built this place knew what they were doing. My great-great-grandfather built it as a wedding present for my great-great-grandmother in 1892. Family history, Marcus nodded slowly. That's worth preserving. Is that a yes? You'll take the project. He was quiet long enough that Charlotte felt her heart rate increase. She'd never wanted a simple yes this badly. Not from investors, not from board members, not from anyone. I'll take it, Marcus said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. First, I set the schedule. I have a son who needs me home by 4 every day to pick him up from school. I have a mother who needs visits that I won't skip no matter how tight the deadline. My family comes first. Always. Agreed. Second, you pay my standard rate. Not a penny more. I've seen how wealthy people operate. They throw money at things, thinking it makes them go faster or makes the workers more grateful. It doesn't. It just makes people feel like employees instead of craftsmen. Charlotte bit back the urge to argue. Agreed. Third, he stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Third, if you're here because you're genuinely interested in seeing this house restored, we're fine. But if you're here because you're interested in me, because you think the single dad carpenter is some kind of project or curiosity or rebellion against whatever world you come from, then we have a problem. I'm here for the house, Charlotte said carefully, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in you too. Why? And don't say because I said no. That's not a reason. That's wounded pride. It's not just because you said no. She took a breath, forcing honesty she wasn't comfortable with. It's because you looked at me and saw something other than my money. Most people look at me and see opportunity. You looked at me and saw someone trying to buy what she couldn't earn. That's more honesty than I've gotten from anyone in years. Marcus studied her with those whiskey-colored eyes, weighing her words against years of learned caution. You know what I see right now? What? A woman standing in her grandmother's abandoned cottage, admitting she let it fall apart because the grief was too heavy. His voice softened. That's not a project or a curiosity. That's just human. Does that mean you believe me? That this isn't some kind of game? It means I'm willing to find out. He extended his hand. We start Monday, 8 a.m. I'll bring my crew for the heavy work, but the finish carpentry I do myself. You're welcome to be here when I'm working, but don't expect me to be entertaining. I talk to the house more than I talk to people. Charlotte took his hand. His grip was firm, his palm rough with calluses, and the contact sent a jolt through her that she hadn't expected. You talk to houses. Old houses have personalities. They've seen things, held families. They deserve respect. He released her hand, turning back to examine the fireplace. If that sounds crazy, you should probably find another carpenter. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like you care about your work. Caring about work is easy. It's caring about people that gets complicated. Monday arrived with October sunshine, and a crew of 3 men who treated Marcus with the easy respect of people who'd worked together for years. Charlotte watched from the porch as they unloaded materials, their movements efficient and practiced, their conversation punctuated by laughter she couldn't quite hear. She dressed down jeans, a simple sweater, minimal makeup, trying to look like someone who belonged on a construction site rather than a boardroom. Based on the amused glance Marcus gave her when he arrived, She hadn't quite succeeded. "You're early," he said. "I wanted to watch, if that's okay." "It's your house." He moved past her into the cottage, already focused on the work ahead. "Just stay out of the way when we're doing structural stuff. This place has enough liability without adding a billionaire injury lawsuit." The crew started with demolition, tearing out water-damaged drywall, removing rotted floorboards, exposing the bones that Marcus had promised were solid. It was loud, dusty work that filled the cottage with chaos and possibility. Charlotte found a corner of the porch where she could observe without obstructing. She brought her laptop, intending to work, but kept getting distracted by the way Marcus moved through the destruction. He was teaching one of the younger crew members how to recognize different types of wood damage. His voice patient as he explained the difference between dry rot and wet rot, between termite damage and carpenter bee damage. "You're staring." She jumped, nearly dropping her laptop. Diane's voice in her earbuds. She'd forgotten about the conference call she was supposed to be leading. "I'm observing," Charlotte corrected, lowering her voice. "There's a difference." The Q3 projections, Charlotte. The board wants them by Friday." "Right, sorry." She forced herself to focus on the screen in front of her, on the numbers and projections that were supposed to matter more than watching a carpenter explain wood damage to his apprentice. But she couldn't stop sneaking glances at Marcus, couldn't stop noticing the way he praised good work and gently corrected mistakes, couldn't stop wondering what it would be like to be seen that way, with patience and attention, and the assumption that she was capable of learning. "Charlotte, the projections are fine. Tell the board I'll have a full presentation ready by Thursday." She paused. "And Diane, clear my schedule for the next few weeks. I'm going to be spending more time at the cottage." "Because of the restoration, or because of the carpenter?" "Yes." The first week passed in a rhythm Charlotte hadn't expected to find comfortable. She arrived every morning around 9, after Marcus and his crew had already started work. She set up her makeshift office on the porch, handling conference calls and emails while the sounds of construction provided a strangely soothing backdrop. Marcus barely spoke to her except to provide brief updates on the work's progress, but she noticed he'd started bringing an extra coffee in the mornings, dark roast, no sugar, left on the porch railing near her chair without comment. On Thursday, she finally gathered the courage to say something. "Thank you for the coffee." Marcus looked up from the cabinet door he was examining, surprise flickering across his face. "You noticed?" "I notice things. It's how I built a company." She held up the cup. "You remembered how I take it from that one time I ordered at your job site." "I remember details. It's how I built a reputation." They looked at each other across the cluttered living room, something shifting in the air between them. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of curiosity replacing suspicion. "Can I ask you something?" Charlotte said. "You can ask, doesn't mean I'll answer." "Why carpentry? You're clearly intelligent, you could have done anything. Why spend your life fixing old houses?" Marcus set down the cabinet door, giving her his full attention for the first time in days. "You know what I love about wood? It tells you what it needs. Every piece is different, different grain, different strength, different personality. You can't force it to be something it's not. You have to listen to it, work with it, understand it. And when you do, when you finally get it right, you've created something that'll last for generations." He moved to the window, looking out at the oak trees that surrounded the cottage. "People are the same way. We all have our grains, our strengths, our personalities. We've all got damage, knots and cracks in places where we've been broken. The trick isn't hiding the damage. It's working with it. Turning it into something beautiful." Charlotte felt her breath catch. "Is that what you're doing with me, trying to work with my damage?" "I'm not doing anything with you." His voice carried no cruelty, just honesty. "You're not a project. You're a client who happens to spend too much time watching me work. Maybe I like watching you work. Maybe that's what worries me." The conversation stalled there, but something had shifted. The wall Marcus kept between them had developed its first crack. Quick pause. If this moment made you smile or made you feel something, please tap subscribe and ring the bell. Our biggest audience is in the USA, the UK, Canada, and South Africa, and we read every comment. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city and let's see how far this story travels. I will mention your city in the next story. Ellie Reed appeared on a Friday afternoon. Charlotte was on a conference call when she heard the sound of a child's voice, high and excited, coming from inside the cottage. She stepped away from her laptop to find Marcus kneeling beside a small, serious-faced boy who was examining a piece of wood with intense concentration. "See how the grain swirls here," Marcus was saying, his voice softer than Charlotte had ever heard it. "That's called a burl. It happens when the tree gets stressed, maybe disease, maybe injury, and the wood grows in a different pattern. Most people think it's a defect, but it's actually valuable. The wood from burls makes the most beautiful furniture." "So the hurt part becomes the beautiful part?" Ellie asked. "Sometimes, if you know how to work with it." Charlotte must have made a sound because both of them looked up. Ellie's eyes went wide, assessing her with the unfiltered evaluation of childhood. "Who's that?" he asked his father. "That's Miss Charlotte. She owns this house." "The one you're fixing." "The one I'm fixing." Ellie considered this, then walked over to Charlotte with the confident directness of someone who hadn't yet learned to be intimidated by adults. "Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm 8. Do you like dinosaurs?" Charlotte crouched down to his level, something her expensive genes probably wouldn't survive. "I don't know much about them, but I'm willing to learn." "Dad says anyone who's willing to learn is worth knowing." Ellie glanced back at his father for confirmation. "That's true, right, Dad?" "That's true." Marcus's voice carried a warning that Charlotte couldn't quite interpret. "But Miss Charlotte is busy with work, so we shouldn't bother her." "She doesn't look busy. She looks like she was watching us." Charlotte laughed before she could stop herself. "You caught me. I was watching your dad explain about burls. It was interesting. Dad knows everything about wood, and about dinosaurs, and about fixing things." Ellie's chest puffed with pride. "He fixed my bike when I crashed it, and he fixed Grandma's music box when it broke, and he fixed the hole in my window when I accidentally threw a baseball through it." "That's quite a list of repairs." "I'm kind of clumsy," Ellie admitted. "But Dad says that's okay. He says breaking things is how you learn not to break things." "That sounds like very wise advice." "Dad's really smart." Ellie looked back at Marcus, then at Charlotte, then back at Marcus with an expression that seemed too knowing for an 8-year-old. "Are you Dad's girlfriend?" "Ellie," Marcus's face flushed. "What?" Grandma asked. "She said there was a lady you kept talking about." Charlotte felt her heart rate increase. "Your dad talks about me. He says you're stubborn and confusing and you watch him work too much." Ellie reported this with cheerful obliviousness to the minefield he was creating. "But he also said you have sad eyes, like someone who forgot how to be happy. I don't think your eyes look sad, though. I think they look green." "Okay, that's enough information sharing for one day." Marcus stood, lifting Ellie with practiced ease. "Go wash up. I brought snacks in my truck." Ellie squirmed. "But I want to talk to the lady more." "You can talk to her later. Maybe, if you stop sharing private conversations with strangers." "She's not a stranger. You talk about her all the time." But Ellie was already being carried toward the door, his protests fading as they disappeared outside. Charlotte stood alone in the half-renovated living room, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Marcus talked about her enough that his son knew about it, talked about her to his mother. said she had sad eyes like someone who forgot how to be happy. When Marcus returned 20 minutes later, Sanzili, his expression had closed off again, the defensive walls rebuilt. I'm sorry about that. He doesn't have much of a filter. He says whatever he's thinking. I like that about him. It's refreshing. Charlotte sat on an overturned crate, giving Marcus the space he seemed to need. He's wonderful. You've done an amazing job raising him. He's the best thing I've ever done. The simplicity of it made Charlotte's chest ache. Everything else, the work, the struggles, the impossible juggling, it's all worth it because of him. Can I ask what happened with his mother? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat on a nearby crate, his posture suggesting this wasn't a story he told often. Rebecca was my high school sweetheart. We dated through college, got married at 23. She got pregnant a year later. Neither of us planned it, but I was excited. He paused. She tried to be excited. I could see her trying, but when Ellie was born, something in her broke. Not postpartum depression. We ruled that out. Just a fundamental realization that she wasn't meant to be a mother. She left. 6 months after Ellie was born, packed a bag, signed over custody, and drove to California to find herself. The bitterness in his voice was old, worn smooth by years of acceptance. She sends birthday cards sometimes, money occasionally, but she's never come back to see him. Never asked for photos or updates. She just left. How do you explain that to a child? I told him the truth, age appropriately, that his mom loved him but wasn't ready to be a mom, that some people aren't meant for the life they end up in and it's not anyone's fault. Marcus's jaw tightened. He asks about her sometimes, less now than he used to. I think he's accepted that she's not coming back. That must be incredibly hard for both of you. It is, but we manage. He looked at her directly. That's why I'm careful about who I let into our lives. Ellie's already lost one parent. I won't let him get attached to someone who's going to disappear when things get complicated. The warning was clear. Charlotte understood it, respected it even, but she also felt something stubborn rising in her chest. I'm not Rebecca. I know, but you're also a billionaire with a life in boardrooms and galas and places I'll never belong. What happens when this, he gestured between them, stops being interesting, when the novelty of the carpenter and the cottage wears off? What if it doesn't? It always does. They sat in silence, the weight of his certainty pressing down on whatever had been building between them. Charlotte wanted to argue, wanted to promise things she wasn't sure she could deliver, but she'd built her success on honesty, on not making promises she couldn't keep. I can't guarantee forever, she said finally. Nobody can, but I can tell you that I'm not here because you're a novelty. I'm here because you see something real when you look at me, and that's rarer than you know. That's a pretty speech. It's not a speech, it's the truth. She stood, gathering her laptop and her dignity. I should go, let you spend time with your son. She was almost to the door when his voice stopped her. Charlotte. She turned. Marcus hadn't moved from his crate, but something in his expression had shifted. Same time Monday. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't trust, but it was an open door. Same time Monday, she confirmed. The second week brought October rain and an unexpected vulnerability. Charlotte arrived at the cottage to find Marcus already inside, working on the built-in bookshelves in what had been her grandmother's reading room. The rain drummed steadily on the new roof, already repaired, already protecting the house from further damage, creating a cocoon of sound that made the rest of the world feel far away. Your grandmother had good taste, Marcus said without looking up. These shelves are hand-carved, original to the house. Whoever built them loved her. My great-great-grandfather. He built the whole place as a wedding present. That's a hell of a wedding present. Apparently, he was a hell of a romantic. Charlotte moved closer, examining the shelves she hadn't really looked at since childhood. I used to sit here while she read to me. This was her favorite spot in the whole house. What was she like? The question surprised her. Marcus rarely asked personal questions. But there was genuine curiosity in his voice, and something in the intimacy of the rainy afternoon made honesty feel safe. She was fierce and kind, and completely unimpressed by money or status. Charlotte traced a carved flower on the shelf's edge. My father hated her, said she was a bad influence, always encouraging me to question things and think for myself. He wanted a daughter who would be quiet and pretty and marry well. She wanted me to be something more. Sound like she succeeded. She made me believe I could. That was her gift, making people believe in themselves. Charlotte's voice roughened. When she died, I was so angry. Angry at cancer for taking her. Angry at God for letting it happen. Angry at myself for not being there more. For being so wrapped up in teenage drama that I didn't appreciate the time we had. Grief does that. Makes us angry at everything, including ourselves. Is that how you felt when Rebecca left? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at myself for not seeing it coming, for believing promises she couldn't keep, for bringing a child into a marriage that was already failing. That's not your fault. No, but it felt like it. He set down his tools, turning to face her fully. At least the reason I got through it. Every time I wanted to fall apart, I looked at him and remembered that someone needed me to hold it together. Kids don't give you the luxury of extended breakdowns. Is that why you're so careful? Because you can't afford to fall apart again. I'm careful because I've learned what happens when I'm not, when I trust too easily, when I believe people when they say they'll stay. His eyes met hers. I'm not built for casual, Charlotte. I don't have the energy for relationships that aren't going somewhere. So if this, whatever this is, isn't serious for you, tell me now, before anyone gets hurt. The directness of it stole her breath. No games, no manipulation, just honest assessment of the stakes. I don't know what this is, she admitted. I don't know where it's going or whether it'll work, but I know I think about you when you're not here. I know I look forward to these mornings more than I've looked forward to anything in years. And I know that scares me, because I don't do vulnerability well. That makes two of us. They stood in the quiet room, rain drumming overhead, something shifting between them that felt like the beginning of possibility. Have dinner with me, Charlotte said, not as a client and contractor, as two people who might be something more. I told you, I don't date clients. Then fire me. I'll hire someone else to finish the cottage. She said it recklessly, meaning every word. I'd rather lose a contractor than lose the chance to see where this goes. Marcus stared at her, surprise and something else, hope maybe flickering across his features. You're serious. I'm always serious. It's one of my less charming qualities. A long moment stretched between them. Then Marcus shook his head, a reluctant smile tugging at his mouth. One dinner, Saturday, I picked the place. Nothing fancy, I can't afford fancy, and I'm not letting you pay. I can afford. I know you can, that's not the point. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell sawdust and coffee and something underneath that was just him. The point is that I need to do this my way, at my pace, with boundaries I'm comfortable with. Okay. Until he doesn't meet you. Not yet. Not until I know this is real. I understand. Do you? Because he'll ask about you. He already asks about you. And I won't lie to him, but I also won't introduce him to someone who might not stay. The warning carried weight, not threat, but reality. Marcus was protecting his son the way she imagined he protected everything he loved, fiercely, completely, without compromise. I understand, Charlotte repeated, and I respect it. Marcus nodded slowly. Saturday, 7 o'clock, I'll text you the address. Saturday arrived with the kind of autumn weather that made everything feel possible. Charlotte changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a soft sweater, expensive but understated, trying to look like someone who belonged wherever Marcus was taking her. He texted an address in a part of town she'd never visited, a neighborhood of small houses with carefully maintained yards, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors and looked out for each other. The restaurant turned out to be a family-owned Italian place with red checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, the kind of establishment that had survived for decades on good food and loyal customers rather than trendy marketing. Marcus was already there when she arrived, standing outside like he'd been waiting. He dressed up, clean jeans, a button-down shirt that looked new, his hair actually combed. He looked nervous. "You found it," he said. "I have GPS." "Right, of course." He held the door open for her, a gesture that felt both old-fashioned and genuine. "I hope this is okay. It's not fancy, but the food's good and the owner's a friend." "It's perfect." They were seated in a corner booth, private enough for conversation, public enough to feel safe. A woman who had to be the owner appeared immediately, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw Marcus. "Marcus, you finally brought someone," she beamed at Charlotte. "I've been telling this boy for years he needs to get out more. Too much work and not enough living." "Maria, this is Charlotte. Charlotte Maria. She's been trying to set me up with her niece for 3 years." "My niece is lovely, but clearly not what you were looking for." Maria winked at Charlotte. "I like you already. You have kind eyes." After she left with drink orders, Charlotte leaned forward. "She seems to know you well." "She knew my mom before the Alzheimer's." Marcus's expression softened. "They were friends. Maria still visits her sometimes, even though Mom doesn't always remember who she is." "That's kind." "Maria's good people. There are more of them in the world than you'd think if you know where to look." The wine arrived and they ordered. She took his recommendation on the pasta, he ordered the same, and suddenly they were on a date. An actual date, with conversation that had nothing to do with construction timelines or business calls. "Tell me something about yourself that I wouldn't guess," Marcus said. "Something that's not in whatever file your assistant compiled on me." Charlotte thought about it. "I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was young. Spent hours watching documentaries about whales and dolphins, dreaming about swimming with them." "What happened?" "My father happened. Said marine biology was a hobby, not a career. Sent me to business school instead." She shrugged. "He wasn't wrong. I'm good at business. I've built something real, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd followed the dream instead of the duty." "It's not too late. You could still swim with dolphins." "I could." The thought had genuinely never occurred to her. "I could, couldn't I?" "You could do anything. That's the luxury of your position. You just have to decide what you actually want." "What do you want, if you could do anything?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I want Ellie to grow up happy and healthy. I want my mom to have good days more than bad days. I want to keep doing work that matters, building things that last." He met her eyes. "I want to stop being afraid that good things won't last." "That's a lot of wanting." "I've had a lot of time to think about it." The pasta arrived, and it was excellent, simple, flavorful, the kind of food that spoke of generations of family recipes. They ate and talked, conversation flowing easier than Charlotte had expected. He told her about Ellie's latest obsession, velociraptors, about his mother's good days and bad days, about the satisfaction of bringing old houses back to life. She told him about the pressure of running a company that bore her father's name, about board meetings that felt like warfare, about the loneliness of being the smartest person in rooms full of people who wanted something from her. "Can I tell you something?" Charlotte said as they finished the last of the wine. You can tell me anything. This is the best first date I've ever had. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Really? Really? No one's tried to impress me with expensive restaurants or name-dropping. No one's calculated how my connections could help their career. We just talked like regular people. We are regular people. You are. I'm apparently worth billions of dollars, which makes regular impossible. The money doesn't make you who you are. Marcus said it with such certainty that she almost believed it. You're who you are. The money is just circumstance. Most people don't see it that way. Most people are idiots. She laughed, surprised and delighted. Did you just call most of humanity idiots? Present company accepted. But he was smiling, and the warmth of it transformed his whole face. You're not what I expected, Charlotte Weston. What did you expect? Someone who'd get bored. Someone who'd realize she didn't actually want what she thought she wanted. Someone who'd disappear when things got complicated. Things aren't complicated yet. They will be, they always are. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The contact sent a jolt through her. But maybe complicated doesn't have to mean impossible. The date ended with him walking her to her car, the October night crisp and clear around them. They stood in the parking lot, neither wanting to break the spell of the evening. I had a really good time, Charlotte said. Me too, Marcus stepped closer. Can I see you again, not at the cottage, something like this? I'd like that. He kissed her then, soft, careful, a question rather than a statement. She kissed him back with an answer, her hands finding his shoulders, his arms pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. I'm not good at this, he said quietly. The dating thing, the trusting thing, you're going to have to be patient with me. I can be patient. And I still won't let you meet Ellie until I'm sure, until we're sure. I understand. And I'm still going to drive a 15-year-old truck and live in a 2-bedroom apartment and work with my hands while you run an empire. The gap between our lives isn't going to magically close. I know. So why do you want this? What do you see that makes all of that worth dealing with? Charlotte thought about the question seriously. She thought about his hands, capable and careful. His eyes, wary but warm when he let his guard down. His voice when he talked about his son. The way he'd rejected her money and demanded her honesty instead. I see someone who looks at me like I'm a person instead of a portfolio, she said finally. Someone who challenges me instead of agreeing with me. Someone who's built a life on integrity even when it would have been easier to compromise. She touched his face. I see someone I could fall in love with if you'd let me. Marcus closed his eyes, something breaking open in his expression. That's terrifying to hear. I know it's terrifying to say. I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to pull away when I should reach out. I'm going to catastrophize about everything that could go wrong. And I'm going to try too hard. I'm going to want to fix everything with money because that's the only language I know. I'm going to scare you with how much I'm willing to give. We're quite a pair. We're quite a pair. He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, like he was making a decision he couldn't unmake. When they finally separated, Charlotte felt something shift inside her, a hope she'd taught herself not to feel, waking up after years of dormancy. Saturday, Marcus said. Same time, I'll cook dinner at my place. Your place? Illy will be at his friend's for a sleepover. You can see where I actually live instead of just imagining the worst. He smiled, uncertain but genuine. I want you to know who I am, all of it, not just the cleaned-up version. I'd like that. She drove home through city streets that looked different somehow, brighter, more possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diane. How was the date? Better than 5 minutes, Charlotte typed back. And it was. It was so much better than 5 minutes that she'd lost track of time entirely. They'd been talking for 3 hours without noticing. They'd shared pieces of themselves that neither usually showed strangers. The 5-minute bet she'd made with herself had been lost before she'd even realized it was over. The next 3 months passed in a blur of renovations and revelations. The cottage transformed under Marcus's hands, each room emerging from decay into something beautiful. Charlotte watched it happen, watched him work with the same patience and attention he brought to everything, and found herself falling deeper with every passing week. She met Ellie properly on Christmas Eve. Marcus had invited her to spend the holiday with them, a decision that had clearly cost him weeks of internal debate based on how nervous he'd been when he asked. She'd shown up with presents wrapped badly, she'd never learned to wrap things herself, and a bottle of wine, and no idea what to expect. Ellie had answered the door. "You're the lady from the cottage," he said, studying her with the assessing gaze she remembered from their first meeting. "Dad said you were coming. He's been cleaning all day. I think he's nervous." "I'm nervous too." "Why, you just have to be yourself." Ellie shrugged like this was obvious. "That's what Dad says. The right people will like you for who you are, not who you're pretending to be." "Your dad's pretty smart." "He's the smartest." Ellie opened the door wider. "Come in. We have hot chocolate. I made it myself, but Dad helped with the stove part because I'm not allowed to use it alone yet." The apartment was small but warm, filled with signs of a life lived fully. Ellie's drawings on the fridge, books overflowing shelves, photos documenting years of a father and son making their way together. Charlotte felt something loosen in her chest, some fear she hadn't even known she was carrying dissolving in the face of this ordinary, extraordinary home. Marcus emerged from the kitchen, an apron over his good shirt, looking so domestically adorable that Charlotte had to resist the urge to take a picture. "You made it." His smile was nervous but genuine. "Ellie, why don't you show Charlotte your dinosaur collection while I finish dinner?" "Okay." Ellie grabbed her hand with the casual confidence of a child who'd already decided she was trustworthy. "Come on, I have over 50. I can tell you everything about all of them." The tour lasted 45 minutes. Charlotte learned more about prehistoric creatures than she'd ever expected to know, but mostly she learned about Ellie, his curiosity, his enthusiasm, the way he looked at the world with wonder instead of cynicism. "You're easy to talk to," Ellie announced when they'd finally exhausted his collection. "Dad was worried you'd be stiff because you're rich, but you're not stiff at all." "Your dad worries a lot." "He worries about everything, but especially about me." Ellie's expression turned thoughtful. "He wants me to be happy. That's why he works so hard, but I told him I'm already happy because I have him." Charlotte felt her eyes sting. "He's lucky to have you." "We're lucky to have each other." Ellie looked at her with the directness of childhood. "Are you going to be part of our family?" "I don't know yet. We're still figuring things out." "Well, I hope so." Dad smiles more now. He didn't used to smile as much before he met you. I like when he smiles. Dinner was simple: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans that Ellie had specifically requested because they're the only vegetable I can tolerate. But it was the best meal Charlotte could remember having. Not because of the food, but because of the company. Because of the easy conversation and the shared laughter, and the sense that she was part of something instead of just observing it. After dinner, they exchanged presents. Charlotte had agonized over what to get. Too expensive would seem like showing off. Too cheap would seem like she didn't care. Finally settling on a rare fossil for Ellie, a real one, authenticated, but not ostentatiously valuable, and a set of antique woodworking tools for Marcus that she'd found at an estate sale. Ellie's face when he opened the fossil was worth every moment of anxiety. It's real, a real fossil, from actually millions of years ago. About 65 million years, according to the documentation. He threw his arms around her with the fierce, uncomplicated affection of a child who hadn't yet learned to guard his heart. This is the best present ever. Dad, look. It's actually real. Marcus caught Charlotte's eye over his son's head, something breaking open in his expression. Thank you, he mouthed. Later, after Illy had been put to bed with his fossil clutched like a teddy bear, Marcus and Charlotte sat on his small couch, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over everything. You made his year, Marcus said quietly, possibly his decade. He's easy to shop for. He tells you exactly what he wants. He likes you, I could tell. He doesn't warm up to people that easily. Marcus took her hand. I know I've been cautious, too cautious maybe, but watching you with him tonight, seeing how naturally you fit into our lives. What? I think I'm falling in love with you. No, I know I'm falling in love with you. I've been falling since that day in the cottage when you told me about your grandmother. I just wasn't ready to admit it. The words hit Charlotte like a wave, expected but still overwhelming. I love you too. I didn't think I would. I didn't think I could, but I do. This is going to be complicated. Everything worthwhile is complicated. I'm still going to have hard days. Days when the weight of everything feels like too much. Days when I pull away instead of leaning in. And I'm still going to try to fix things with money because that's my default. I'm going to work too much and miss things I should be present for. I'm going to be imperfect in 1,000 ways. Sounds like we're perfect for each other. Charlotte laughed, feeling tears threatening. That's a terrible joke. I know, I'm working on my material. He pulled her closer. Merry Christmas, Charlotte. Merry Christmas, Marcus. They sat together in the glow of the Christmas lights, not speaking, not needing to. Outside, the city carried on its holiday bustle. Inside, two people who'd learned to guard their hearts were slowly, carefully, allowing themselves to hope. 3 years later. The cottage looked like a dream. Charlotte stood on the porch she'd watched Marcus rebuild, board by board, looking at the home that had risen from decay into something beautiful. The white paint gleamed. The gardens flourished. The inside held furniture they'd chosen together, memories they'd made, and a life neither of them had expected to find. You're doing that thing again. Marcus appeared beside her, coffee in hand, staring at the house like you can't believe it's real. Can you blame me? She accepted the coffee, leaning into his warmth. 3 years ago, this place was falling apart. I was falling apart. And now? And now you're marrying a carpenter in a garden you rebuilt together. He smiled. Not exactly how you planned your life, I'm guessing. No, this is better. Inside, she could hear Illy, 11 now, all gangly limbs and growing opinions, explaining something about evolutionary biology to Diane, who'd somehow become part of their extended family. Grace Reed, Marcus's mother, sat in the sunny corner she loved, having one of her increasingly rare clear days, watched over by the caregiver Charlotte's foundation had funded. The wedding would be small, just family and close friends, gathered in the garden of the cottage where everything had changed. Charlotte had offered to plan something elaborate. She could afford it, after all, but Marcus had asked for this instead. Simplicity, authenticity, a celebration of what they'd actually built rather than a performance for others. Nervous? She asked. Terrified, he said it cheerfully, but good terrified, the kind that means something important is happening. Any regrets about all of this? Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression serious. 3 years ago, you walked onto my job site, and I told you that you hadn't earned the privilege of breathing the same air as me. I remember. I was wrong, he touched her face. You've earned everything. Every moment, every trust, every piece of my heart I thought I'd never give to anyone again. You showed up and kept showing up, even when I made it hard, even when I pushed you away. even when I was too scared to believe this could be real. You were protecting your son. I was protecting myself, using Ellie as an excuse because admitting I was scared seemed too vulnerable. He pulled her into his arms. But you stayed, through all of it, and now we're here. We're here. So no regrets, not a single one. The ceremony happened at golden hour, the October sun painting everything in shades of honey and rose. Ellie served as best man, his speech a mix of dinosaur facts and genuine emotion that made everyone laugh and cry. Grace surprised them all by standing, walking to Marcus and saying with perfect clarity, "Your father would be so proud. I'm so proud. You found someone worthy of you." They danced under string lights as the evening cooled, their guests watching with the soft smiles of people witnessing something real. Charlotte thought about that first night in the bar, about rejection and pride, and the strange path that had led her here. "Remember our bet," she murmured against Marcus's shoulder. 5 minutes, that's what I gave you. 5 minutes to prove this wasn't just novelty." "How long has it been now?" "Approximately 1.6 million minutes, give or take." Marcus laughed, pulling her closer. "Seems like I beat your deadline." "You did, decisively." "So what do I win?" Charlotte looked up at him. This man who'd refused her money and demanded her honesty, who taught her that love wasn't about what you could buy but what you were willing to build. "Everything," she said. "You win everything." 5 years later. The house was chaos, but the good kind. Ellie, 16 now and taller than Marcus, was arguing amiably with his father about the proper way to hang a picture frame. Charlotte's mother-in-law Grace had passed 2 years ago, peacefully, surrounded by the family she'd fought so hard to protect. They'd named their daughter after her, little Gracie, age 3, currently attempting to convince the family dog, Blueprint, that he wanted to wear a tiara. "You spoil her," Marcus said, appearing in the kitchen where Charlotte was attempting to make breakfast. 3 tiaras. She has 3 tiaras. She likes tiaras and I like her. Basic math. Your math skills are questionable. My math skills built an empire. Your math skills burned the toast. He reached around her to rescue the bread from the smoking toaster. But I love you anyway. She turned in his arms, looking up at the face she'd memorized over years of mornings just like this one, the gray appearing at his temples, the laugh lines that proved he smiled more than he used to, the steady warmth in his eyes that had never wavered, not even in their hardest moments. "I love you too," she said. "Every minute, every day, even when you criticize my cooking." Someone has to maintain standards. From the living room, Gracie shrieked with delight about something, probably Blueprint tolerating the tiara, and Ellie's voice rose in mock outrage about his father's picture-hanging philosophy. This, Charlotte thought, this is what I was looking for without knowing how to name it. A life built on honesty instead of transactions, a family earned rather than inherited, a love that had grown from rejection into something unshakable. "Hey," Marcus said softly, "where'd you go?" "Nowhere, just remembering." "Remembering what?" "That night in the bar, when you told me I hadn't earned the privilege of breathing the same air as you." Marcus winced. "I was an idiot." "You were protecting yourself, and you were right, I hadn't earned it, not then," she smiled. "But I hope I've earned it now." "Charlotte," he cupped her face in his hands, those carpenter's hands that had rebuilt her grandmother's cottage and her broken heart with equal care. "You've earned everything, 1,000 times over, every single day. Even when I burn the toast. Even then." He kissed her, soft and familiar, the kind of kiss that came from years of practice and decades of promise still to keep. From the living room, Gracie shouted, "Ellie, help! Blueprint won't hold still for his crown." "Duty calls," Marcus said against Charlotte's lips. "It always does." But neither of them moved. holding each other in the chaos of their beautiful, improbable life, grateful for every one of the millions of minutes they'd built it from. The billionaire had bet the carpenter wouldn't last 5 minutes. He'd stayed for a lifetime. And that's where we'll pause for today, friends. But don't worry, Charlotte and Marcus's story isn't over yet. We have so much more to share. The challenges they'll face, the life they'll build, and a proposal that will make you believe in love all over again. If this story has touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means everything to us at Story Buddy, and it helps us bring more of these beautiful stories to people who need them. Drop a comment below telling us what you think. I read every single one. And share this with someone who might need to hear that love is worth the risk, even when it's scary. I'll see you in the next part. Until then, remember, the best things in life aren't the ones we inherit or achieve. They are the ones we build day by day with patience and love.